everyone, Charlene Ortiz here. Today I'm going to do an instructional video for the chest, and I'm just going to discuss the most common chest exercises that people do in their exercise regimen, and just the different things that you need to watch out for, the most common mistakes that people make, and how to most effectively and safely train your chest when you're performing these exercises. Now I'm teaching you these exercises in the most basic form. There's obviously different variations and more advanced ways that you can do these movements, but like I've said in other videos, if you understand how to do the movements in the most basic form, then when you go, as you get stronger and you go on to more advanced versions, you'll still understand how to do the movement properly, again, making the exercise more effective and also protecting yourself from injury. The first movement I'm going to discuss is going to be just a basic chest press, and I'm going to be using my tubing right here. Now, the tubing would imitate a cable machine if you were using a cable machine at the gym. Anything that I do with the tubing in any of my workouts, you can imitate the same exercises at the gym. The same exact rules are going to apply. Okay, so as with any exercise that we do, whatever muscle it is we're going to be training, we want the resistance where it's coming from to line up with the muscle as much as possible. So that way we're getting the best resistance against that muscle, again, and against where that muscle is located at. Okay, so with your chest press, I'm going to grab my handle, and I'm going to actually grab an overhand grip on the handle as opposed to underhand. A lot of people will do underhand, and one of the reasons I'm not crazy about underhand is that it does, it will get the tubing more out of alignment, number one. Number two, it's just obnoxious when the tubing or the cable, whatever cable machine you're using, is rubbing up against the arm. And I also don't like the stress that it puts a little bit more stress on the shoulder, so personally I like an overhand grip. We're also making sure our wrist is in a neutral position. We're not bending it way back, which is the most common tendency that people will do when they're doing any type of like pressing movement. All right, so as always, we're beginning in our neutral spine, and you should all know by now there's a foundation of everything that we do. My shoulders are back and down. My belly button is staying pulled in, so there's like a string attached to your belly button, pulling your belly button back and towards your spine. And I'm just in a lunge stance right here. I'm not, leaning forward too much. I'm just in a lunge stance. That's just my base and my stance for this movement. Okay, so my elbow is at a 90 degree, and I'm staying parallel to the floor with this arm. You want to be careful that when you're doing a chest press movement, and this will apply with the dumbbell press, this will apply with the bench press, this will apply with the push-up, that you don't go too far back with that arm. The reason is because once you go too far back, you'll stretch the chest, the pectoralis major muscle out so much that it's at a certain point, it won't be engaged until you get to a certain point in your range of motion. So from here to here, the anterior deltoid would be taking on most of the stress. And you don't want that unless you're doing exercises that are specific for the anterior deltoid, where that's the primary muscle that's engaged. You don't want the anterior deltoid taking on that kind of stress, because the chest is a pretty big, strong muscle. And in general, we're usually going to use heavier weights for our chest than we would if we were doing like anterior deltoid, like a shoulder press or like a frontal raise. Because again, the chest is a bigger, stronger muscle. So you don't want the anterior deltoid all by itself taking on the amount of weight that the chest, a much larger muscle, is meant to take on. So that's why you want to start at 90 degree, maybe a little bit past 90 degree, but not much. Because again, the chest doesn't even contract fully to the full extension anyway. So, okay, so the anterior deltoid, the tricep muscle, will be an accessory to this movement. So as I'm extending, there is a space between me and the tubing, and the reason for that is so that I can come to the center line of the body, and the tubing will clear my body, okay? The reason I'm coming to the center line, and I'm not stopping here, I'm coming all the way here, is because in order to get a full contraction of the chest, you want to make sure that you're coming to the center line of the body, and that's what's going to get a nice full contraction and actually cause the chest muscle to protrude a little bit and you're going to build hypertrophy, which means growth of the muscle. But the muscle will grow, will grow better if we do a full contraction and going against, because whenever you're training, you kind of want to think about what direction do the muscle fibers go, and you want to go against what the direction the muscle fibers go. And if you go against it, you're going to get the most effective contraction in that muscle. Okay, so let me do just a few repetitions just straight through so you can see the movement. My neutral, I'm in my abs are pulled in tight, I'm in my lunge stance. I'm parallel to the floor, I'm at 90 degrees, and my wrist is in a neutral position as well. My shoulders are staying down. I'm extending, bringing it to the center line and stopping at my 90. As I extend, I breathe out. As I release, I breathe in. Breathing out and in. Okay, so this is going to be your basic chest press movement. All right, the next movement I'm going to discuss is going to be a chest fly, and this is another very popular movement. You can do it with a cable or with dumbbells, and I much prefer a chest fly with cables, and or with tubing as opposed to dumbbells, and I'm going to explain why when I get to the dumbbells. Okay, so with the basic chest fly, the difference is just that your arm is going to be extended. That's the only difference, and you want to step forward so that the resistance is behind you, so the tubing is a little bit behind you, because again, to really effectively train a muscle, you want the direction of resistance to be the opposite of where the muscle is located. So my chest is in the front, we want the resistance to come from the back. And with this movement, my bicep is going to be more of an accessory muscle with this movement. And I like doing the fly with the cable. Now you can do the fly, like if you have one of those cable machines that have, two handles, you can do it, with two handles, that's fine. That's an appropriate way to do it. But I like doing one side at a time just because it engages my core muscles a little bit more. My transverse has to work a little bit harder to engage, and that's one reason I like one side at a time. But again, doing it bilateral, two sides at a time is fine too. And if you are using a fly machine, again, the same rules are going to apply. So it doesn't matter how much weight, what position you're in, what type of equipment you're using. The rules for the movement, the mechanics for the movement is always going to be the same. It's always going to apply. And I prefer, because I know they have the chest machines where you bring the elbows in like this, I much prefer where the arms are extended because you just get a better contraction when the arms are extended. Okay, so chest fly, again, you want the tubing to be lined up, with the main part of the muscle, the main part of the pectoralis. I'm stepped a little forward. I'm in my neutral. My knees are just slightly bent to give me a nice solid base. I will often put my other hand in the center line of my body just to kind of give me a reference point of where I need to stop. So my hand is in the center line, and then I just bring it to that hand, and I always envision or think about touching the palm of my hand with the hand that's actually doing the movement. Because you want your elbow to be just slightly bent. You don't want it to be locked or or too bent like this. If you really want to get a great contraction, you want it to be almost straight, but just a slight bend, a nice soft elbow. So again, I'm going to the center line of my body, and that's what's going to help to give me a full contraction of the chest, is going to the center line of my body. Okay, and so again, this is going to apply no matter what version you do this in. So sometimes people will do it where the cables are coming up, and it would be the same if you were doing it with the cables, coming from above you. It would be the same rules. All the same rules would apply. Or if you're laying down on a bench and you're pulling the cables from below, again, the same rules are always going to apply as the way that I did it right now in a very basic form. So, okay guys, let's go ahead. I'm going to move down to the floor, and I'm going to discuss push-ups and dumbbell presses. Okay, so now I'm going to start with just a basic push-up and just the appropriate form when you do push-ups. And I know push-ups just seem like such a basic movement. It's one of my favorite exercises because there are so many different muscles actually that are engaged at the push-up when you're doing it properly than just the chest. but I just want to review the appropriate form and also different variations that you can do of a push-up. Now I'm using a step right here just to elevate myself a little bit, and like I have my buffet behind me. If you're not quite ready to go that low for a push-up, you can use something a little bit higher, like a buffet or your kitchen counter, a coffee table, even your bed, you know, whatever. Because like every other exercise, the basic rules for the form are still going to apply. And so with our push-up, again, you know how we always discuss neutral spine. Neutral spine is going to be very important with the push-up form because it is one of the most common exercises where people will really neglect their neutral spine when they're doing the movement. All right, so I'm just going to go into a full body push-up position. And so you want to make sure that your glutes are engaged, your belly button is pulled in towards your spine to protect your low back. I always instruct to lead with the chest and not the hips with a basic push-up form. Again, it's just a basic push-up form. And there are different ways to do push-up, but this in the most basic form, you want to lead with the chest, not with your hips, okay? And you also don't want your butt sticking up in the air either. If you cannot do full body push-up without being able to maintain neutral spine, then you need to do the movement more elevated. And personally, I know you can also do push-ups on your knees, but I personally prefer that if you cannot do a full body push-up, that you do the push-up at least on an elevated surface, because I like it better when your full body is involved. You know, when your legs are completely straight and your whole body is involved in the movement, because again, it will help you get used to being in a neutral spine position and teach you how to maintain neutral spine in like a full body position as opposed to just doing it from your knees. It's not bad or wrong to do it from your knees. I mean, you would still, again, use the same rules and make sure you're maintaining your neutral. But I just personally prefer that you do it elevated if you cannot do just a full body on the floor. And like with many other exercises, don't worry about your range of motion in the beginning. Just focus on maintaining neutral spine throughout the movement, and that's going to be the most important thing. Doing the movement properly, not how far down you go with the range of motion. So I'll do just a few repetitions straight through just so you can see the appropriate movement. So again, my glutes are engaged, my belly button's pulled in tight, and I'm leading the movement with my chest and not with my hips, okay? And I also don't want to go down so far. Again, the same rule will apply when I was doing the chest press. You don't want your arms to go back so far, again, that your chest is overstretched and that your anterior deltoid is going to take on too much stress. So even with the push-up, you'll still stop at a 90. Maybe you can go a little bit past that if you don't have shoulder injury or anything like that. But again, I much prefer that you stop at a 90-degree angle, and that's going to protect your shoulders. So, all right, that's the basic push-up form. And I just wanted to kind of demonstrate like a version that you could do if you wanted to make it a little more advanced. I have my Bosu right here, and this would challenge your balance, your stability a little bit more. You know, if you wanted to do a different type of variation of a push-up. And also another tip too, you want to watch what your head is doing, because remember, neutral spine starts from the bottom of the skull all the way down to the lower back. And so your neck, just like when I talk about how to do proper squat form, how to do pretty much any movement, my neck also wants to stay in neutral. I don't want my head to be up like this, okay? Because that's compressing the cervical vertebrae. And it will also kind of naturally, you'll kind of naturally arch your back if you lift your head up like that. So you want to keep your head in its neutral. And I'm not looking down either. I'm keeping it in its neutral throughout the whole range of motion. Okay? So again, that's just how to do just a basic push-up form. And again, you'll want to practice it in its basic form, either full body or on an elevated surface, because as I go into workouts in the future, I will be using push-ups, and I'll be doing different variations as time goes on, more advanced variations of that. All right, so lastly is going to be a basic dumbbell press. And so with the dumbbell press, the rules are pretty much going to be the same as the chest press. They're actually going to be exactly the same. The only difference is that we're going to be laying down when we're doing the dumbbell press. So, okay, basic dumbbell press. Typically, in order for when I'm working with my clients to protect, if they're going to be doing this on their own, to protect their shoulders, I'll just have them kind of flip them up like this and then pull them in to get ready for the movement. And that just helps to protect your shoulders and again, just begin the movement safely. All right, so when I'm laying down, again, I'm still focused on my neutral. I'm not letting my back arch. I'm still keeping my belly button tucked in, activating my transverse abdominis to give my low back support. So from here, I'm going to extend and rotate. And we just want the weights, again, to be in alignment with our chest. We don't want it in front of our face or in front of our stomach. We want it to be in alignment with our chest. My wrist, again, is in a neutral. It's not going to be bent back. And I'm going to just bend my elbows, and the floor will stop my arms at 90 degrees. And that's the reason I like doing dumbbell presses on the floor, is because it will just automatically stop you at 90 degrees and it won't allow you to go too far. And as I'm doing the movement, just like the chest press with the cable, I'm bringing the weights together, and that's helping give me a full contraction in the chest. You could also do one side at a time if you wanted to. You know, you could alternate, or you could just bring them up and together like this. That's also another way to do your chest. And if you do these movements on a bench, now what I like about the bench as opposed to the floor is that you have to balance yourself more on the bench. And often when I see people doing dumbbell presses on a bench, they'll have their legs hanging off the edge of the bench and then their back is arched. And that's really not a preferable way to do dumbbell presses. If you are going to do them on the bench, you do want to bring your feet up on the bench as well, because again, you'll be a lot less likely to arch your back, number one. Number two, you have to work on balancing yourself more. And that's one reason I like doing it on the bench with your feet up, not with your feet down on the floor. Okay, so I'll just do a few more repetitions. So again, I'm bringing it to the center line of my body, and just like the chest press, with the tubing, the anterior deltoid and the tricep will be an accessory muscle to the movement. As I come down, I'll breathe in. As I extend, I'll breathe out. And my movements are always slow and controlled. Always, always. When I'm done, what I'll usually do is rotate my weights in, bring them down in close to my body and set them down like that. Again, it's just going to be a safer way to release the weights where you're going to be less likely to hurt your shoulder. Okay, so I talked about a minute ago why I do not like chest flies with the weights as opposed to the cable machine. The reason is because when you do flies with the cable machine, because of the nature of the resistance, the way the resistance works on the cable machine is the plate, the stack of plates or the tubing is what's going up against gravity, as opposed to with the dumbbell press, it's the actual free weights that are going up against gravity. So with the tubing, the tubing is what's giving me the resistance, okay? So when I'm doing chest fly with the tubing, at this point right here, there's not really any resistance. When I go to a full extension to the center line, that's where that's going to be the most difficult part of the movement, where there's going to be the most resistance, the most pull on my chest. When I'm using dumbbells, when I'm using free weights, the chest is going to take on the most stress in this position right here, and the least stress in this position right here. Okay, so the way that, how do I explain? Okay, so the mechanics behind that is that, because you know how I discussed when you, your chest doesn't fully engage until we really get to the center line, and it doesn't even really start to engage until about this point right here where you'll actually feel a contraction in the chest. Now with the tubing, it's appropriate because this is where the chest is getting the most contraction, where it's contracting the most, and it's also the most challenging part of the movement with a cable machine or with the tubing or with like a fly machine, okay? And this is the easiest, going to be the easiest part of the movement where there's the least amount of stress, and that's where the anterior deltoid is going to be doing most of the work from like here to here, okay? And so the anterior deltoid will be more protected, and then at this point the chest is going to be the primary muscle that's engaged. With the free weights, it's going to be the opposite. This position right here is where gravity is going to be pushing the most against the dumbbells, and that's where the anterior deltoid is going to be doing more of the work until we get to about this point where you really start to feel the chest engage more. And then this is going to be the easiest part of the movement because you're in alignment with gravity. So when I'm laying down with my dumbbells, here I'm alignment with gravity, so there's really no stress on my chest, you know? And at this point right here is where I'll feel the most stress. And so even though I'm coming together, my chest is not strained at its maximum potential in this position. And so, but with the dumbbell press, it is because again, my arm is bent. And so, I hope that makes sense, but with the dumbbell press, the reason why it's more appropriate with the dumbbell press is because the arm is bent in, the tricep is more of an accessory muscle to it, and the anterior deltoid is not going to be taking on as much stress as when the arm is completely straight. And so again, that's why I'm not a huge fan of dumbbell flies with the actual free weight. I prefer, if you're going to do a fly, you'll get a more effective contraction, a more effective workout on the chest if you do a fly with the tubing, a cable machine, what have you, but not really with the free weights. So I hope that makes sense because like I've mentioned before, sometimes what's in my head doesn't always come out of my mouth exactly the way I want it to sound. But anyway, guys, so those are the most popular chest exercises, the most common ones that people do in their workout regimen. And I just wanted to make sure that I did a video on how to perform them properly in the appropriate form, how to do it the most effectively and the safest way to perform the movement. So if you have any questions, please make sure you comment down below. If I didn't explain anything properly or you want me to kind of elaborate on something, absolutely, please feel free to comment. I definitely want to, hear what you guys have to say. And if you enjoyed this video, I would definitely appreciate a thumbs up in the video. That would be really awesome. So, okay, guys, once again, thank you so much for your time and attention. As always, I really appreciate it. Remember to subscribe to the channel so that way you can continue to get great content and continue to get great workouts and information to help you to reach your health and fitness goals. So remember, guys, take care of yourself, protect yourself physically and emotionally, and don't forget, your health is your most valuable asset. Invest in it. Bye-bye.